Hello and welcome to the Arash Markazi Show, presented by the Sporting Tribune on the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio in Southern California, 98.5 The Bet in Las Vegas, and the Hawaii Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760 in Hawaii. And because we are on the air in Hawaii, I do have to begin the show by sending love and prayers to all of our friends in Hawaii. You can hear us in Hawaii, on Maui, and just absolutely devastated and heartbroken for what's happening out there. And so just want to begin the show that way by saying to the good folks of Maui and all of Hawaii, really, just you're in our thoughts and our
I,
prayers.
I,
Guys,
I do want to
I
touch
do
on that
want
really
to,
quick,
yeah.
because obviously everything is happening in real time as we record this here. We record this here on a Thursday, but for people trying to help out, HawaiiCommunityFoundation.org / Maui Strong. Again, that's HawaiiCommunityFoundation.org / Maui Strong. If you can help out with anything that you can, because there's lots of people that need help with what's going on over there.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, like as we head into the weekend, definitely think of our folks, our friends in Maui and in Hawaii. Want to begin here, guys, because we've talked about it for quite some time, but I think we're going to get a resolution to some of this. By the way, someone I'm in a studio here, and someone is washing the window right behind me again. Thankfully,
They want to get
this
your
is
scoops.
we're on the radio, but we're not. Yeah, so this is also it's a television show as well now, but you never know what you're gonna get. Listen, the college realignment that has been the talk of the town. Where Cal and Stanford go. We've been talking about that, and it doesn't look like there will be a resolution in the ACC. I don't think they'd want to go to the Mountain West. Again, we're going to see how this all plays out over the next week or so. I'm confident that obviously these schools want to figure out where they're going to go before the season begins, which may be hard. But I kind of wanted to start there because I think the way that this should all play out at some point, and it won't happen in the short term, this is all about football. This is all about football and the TV dollars attached to football. I really don't understand why the Olympic sports have to be involved in this. Again, when you're talking about a 12 to 16 game college football regular season, and you're talking about 6 to 8 road trips, where they're taking private chartered planes and staying in 5-star hotels. I'm not worried about football. So I mean, if football wants to be separate from these conferences and have a 65 team or whatever super league, that's fine. That is sort of like the new world of college football. Why we have to loop in, and how they haven't figured this out, why we have to loop in lacrosse and men's and women's volleyball. Like, why, for example, USC women's volleyball has to figure out a way to get to Penn State, to Nebraska, to Rutgers, and all these games when you know they're going to be flying commercial, when you know they're staying at a Holiday Inn Express. That's my problem with this, and I do think long term that does happen. I do think colleges come to their senses and realize just because Fox and some of these other networks want USC football, we don't also have to loop in USC's women's volleyball and lacrosse team and force them to do crazy things that, again, these conferences were put into place to keep them all generally regionally intact. So if you're a USC, again, lacrosse team, you're traveling to UCLA, you're going to Cal and Stanford, you're going to Washington, these are all short flights. What they're making the Olympic sports teams do now is ridiculous. I kind of wanted to start there because, as I was watching this all play out, this is all about football and this is all about TV dollars attached to football. And by the way, that two of the greatest academic schools, just on pure in terms of what they've done in terms of Nobel Peace Prize winners, presidents, whatnot. The fact that Cal and Stanford are on the outside looking in is an indictment on where we're at right now in this whole college sports realm. Where Cal and Stanford, especially, like, let's just focus on Stanford. they're having to beg, like, can we please be a part of a conference? I mean, this is an absolute joke.
Well,
What are
look,
some
with
points on with you
Stanford, I
guys?
do kind of find it ironic because if we go back years when Arizona and Arizona State were brought into the Pac 12, there was one school that was very hoity toity and said, absolutely not. We can't have Arizona and Arizona State. And in that same meeting, USC said, we will leave the pack immediately if you do not allow this. And then they said, fine, like the little brother, fine, whatever. So, whatever schools are like high and mighty when it comes to athletics and they stand on their education, I find it a little bit funny and a little bit hypocritical. And it's kind of ironic now that they're the last one. They're the Will Smith meme looking in the living room and it's completely empty. And to your point, I don't a week ago or 2 weeks ago on this show, I talked about how having money doesn't necessarily mean that you're the smartest in the room. And when it comes to the NCAA, all they focused on was the money, and no one just took a second to say, you know what, even if we allow all this chaos and to let everything in college football just flip over, why don't we make sure that this is separate from everything else logistically? And they didn't. And now, even you're talking about the ACC moves, and it looks like it's not going to happen. Even if it does happen, if you look at the math, like that little bit of money extra that they would have gotten for making that move, really just covers the extra expenses that you now have with travel because you got yourself in this situation with everything else.
Yeah.
So it's in theory, it should have been separate, college football and everything else. I mean, we're even talking about not even just the other sports. I mean, this could affect the NCAA tournament. Like, that's crazy. That's the other money getter.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating, and that's my 2 cents.
Adrian, those are great points, by the way. And I just wanted to add on, like, yeah, I mean, Stanford has been super adamant about not allowing NIL deals. They're losing recruits because of it. And that's kind of been the end of such a great university, especially a football program that went downhill as soon as Jim Harbaugh left. I mean, David Shaw was never really a great coach. In fact, I remember this memory I had of watching Andrew Luck in the Fiesta Bowl against Blackman and Whedon in Oklahoma State in Arizona years ago. And he was cutting clock, David Shaw, running up the middle, trying to get his field goal kicker. Wasn't that good? A 40-yard field goal to tie it instead of when you have the best quarterback in the country and Andrew Luck trying to get guys open to win the game. And the field goal kicker ended up missing it. They lost by 3 to a team they very well should have could have beat. From then on, David Shaw continued to, take this program down and down and down and down and down. And now they have a new coach, whatever, and it's like they're just not the same. It's so sad for me specifically, like growing up a Stanford football fan. My dad went there, like Christian McCaffrey, Andrew Luck, like John Elway. Like look at how many greats came from that school. And now basically it's a Mountain West program. Let's be real. Boise State would kick their butt in a head-to-head matchup right now. Same thing with Cal. Cal is not good right now at football. The thing is what people have to think about. If football drives the money, who is the best program of those four left? It's Oregon State, right? Like by far. And what are they going to do? Because the Cal Stanford thing, yeah, the ACC didn't work out. What is Oregon State going to do, right? Because they have an up and coming football program, and their basketball
Yeah.
program went to the Elite Eight just a few years ago.
Yeah, I
By the way, really, really quick, and I'll just jump in. The president of Washington State addressed these same concerns, Brandon, where they said, listen, like, we can't make certain moves because financially it makes no sense for us. So we're not going to go to the Atlantic Coast Conference. Financially, if the Big East wanted them, sorry, the Big Ten wanted them, which they don't, like, maybe that might make sense. But there is a financial obligation if you're going from Pullman, Washington to the Carolinas, for example. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And what people are forgetting is that this is more than just football. This is more than just football.
Oh yeah,
would
Armand.
they would
Go
they
ahead.
would they potentially go the independent route then for a school like Stanford, or what is the next possible move?
So that was talked about. I mean, that was sort of, again, people are throwing out things at this point. But, if you did Notre Dame and Army and Navy and Cal and BYU, or, just try to put a bunch of like independent schools together, could that work? Potentially, potentially. But um, the bigger story here, and the thing that will have to get sorted out, but these colleges are so quick this is a quick cash grab that they didn't really have time to think. So I mean, the idea that you're going to extrapolate or remove football from your program, that's going to take too long. So like, let's just grab the cash and figure it out. 100% they have to remove football from the other sports, or maybe football and hoops, but you cannot include, you go down the list of Olympic sports, whether that's gymnastics or water polo or volleyball or whatever. When you start doing this geographically, and again, the TV dollars won't cover it, and by the way, they have to find a way to make it work, and it's not going to happen anytime soon because some of these TV deals are long term deals. Um, but I don't know how much it's going to cost some of these programs to, again, send volleyball, soccer, lacrosse, and all that across the country for a 2 game set that won't be
And by the way, I
broadcasted
wanted
on
to add one
TV.
thing before. I know Adrian has a quick point, but look, it's this is a disgrace Pac-12 wise to because of how dominant the other sports have been, like swimming, volleyball, like you just mentioned, Arash. Like the Pac-12 is king when it comes to that. Like they've been, I mean, especially Stanford, probably don't they have the most championships of any school in history if you go top to bottom of the Division 1 sports? I believe they do. And oh, it is it?
It's UCLA,
Yeah, but it's
Stanford,
Pac-12.
and USC. Well, I don't know. I mean,
Exactly. It's
they're
formerly
technically
Pac-12. Now
exactly
UCLA is going
Pac-12.
to the Big Ten. It's just so sad to see all the other sports, and I know they don't make money like football and basketball, but I mean, there's how the dominance of like Katie Ledecky went to Stanford, right? Like all these great athletes that are in sports that don't make as much money in baseball too. We don't talk about baseball a lot too. The Pac-12 is a powerhouse in baseball. Oregon State had won a national title just a few years ago, right? Like just they've been there.
Yeah.
Stanford national titles, like UCLA national titles. Now UCLA is leaving, right? Like those 4 teams left in the Pac-12 can still play baseball at an elite level too, and of course the other sports that don't make as much money. So that's why it's like Mountain West. Like the Mountain West cannot compete baseball wise with Oregon State, right? Like that's something you have to consider too. Can they do the other sports? Can they even compete in swimming and all that stuff with Stanford? Like no. So that these are all types of things you need to consider. Like, and it's a screwed up process.
So with the Mountain West, real quick, what the problem there is, I think, twofold. It's not just the competition. It's not just that, if you're Stanford and Cal, you don't view them the same way. It's the TV money. Again, all of this is happening because of TV money. So, if you looked at the former deal for the Pac-12 and it was anywhere from 20, 25 million, maybe 30, the Mountain West is a fraction of that. So that is why that is the last resort. The two schools that will be left out in the cold, at least short term, while we figure all this out, is Washington State and Oregon State, because those aren't, quite frankly, no disrespect. They know the position that they're in. They're not signature programs, and they're located in locations that are not big, tourist draws. So no one's like trying to go out to Pullman, Washington. No one's trying to go out to Corvallis. So they were always attached to their bigger schools. Those schools are gone, of course. And so I do think what makes the most sense in the short term for them is to join the Mountain West, but they have to figure out a different solution. And I think just in terms of college sports as a whole, we do have to figure out a way to just remove, again, football has already been removed in terms of their championship, right? This is the last year of the 14 playoffs. Next year, or the following season after this upcoming season, we have a 16-team playoff. Again, that has nothing to do with the NCAA. That's March Madness and all
Might
that
not even
stuff.
be necessary.
So the NCAA has nothing to do with the college football playoff. That's a completely different thing. So we really need to view these
First
schools
off,
in
if
the same
Washington
way.
State or Oregon State want us to do a live show there, we'll love to pull up first and foremost. Second of all, it's funny that now everything has changed so quickly, which is also why I'm kind of like not perplexed at some of these things because we don't know what's going to happen in 5 years. Because if you would have told me 5 years ago what's happening now, I wouldn't have believed you. But when we talk about like what needs to be done or why wasn't this done, like I have no faith in the leaders at schools, I have no faith in the NCAA. They spent the last how long? Couple months specifically going to Congress complaining and moaning about NIL while all this other stuff was happening.
Hmm.
And they're making so much money off
Yeah.
of all these deals, and they were more concerned about controlling that little piece of the cake from players than actual big, huge issues that they got going on, which has completely changed the landscape, and it might affect college football. We'll see how the popularity shifts. It's funny going to the 16 teams. Do we need 16 teams now? If every powerhouse is in three conferences, excuse me, and it's going to play out within the conference schedule of a season. So now it doesn't even seem necessary. So it's the wild, wild west, baby. That's all it is.
Yeah, the president for Washington State had a great point when he said people like act differently when this type of money is involved. People lie, people hide the truth, people don't say what their intention is. He was really transparent, and I think, listen, at this point, he has nothing to lose. He's very upset about the situation that his school is in. But he basically said, "Hey, listen, when this type of money is involved, it's amazing how people act." And he had every faith following Pac-12 Media Day in Las Vegas that the remaining 10 schools would stay intact. They'd come together to have the best TV deal that they possibly could. I think the problem there, it wasn't a great deal, but that's a separate story. And then listen, they would move forward as the Pac-10, perhaps as the Pac-12 if they brought in two new schools. But as soon as the Big Ten came calling, as soon as the Big 12 came calling, and they came calling for the schools that they wanted, it's again, these TV networks can kind of pick and choose. And again, why do I keep going back to the TV network? The Big Ten invited two additional schools in Oregon and Washington because they went to Fox and they said, "Hey, Fox, listen, we can bring two more signature schools into the mix. How much money more can you give us? Let's do
Hmm.
35 million each or 30 million each or something like that." And that was enough to get the
And
deal
the deal
done.
with
And
NBC.
so,
And they still
you
have their
know,
ESPN. They still have
deal
ESPN
with
for the longest years.
NBC.
And if we go back at the creation of the Big Ten Network, the Big Ten and the Pac had a conversation, and the Big Ten said, no, 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 we're not going to do this. To your point about the lying and the stealing and some of the moves that they made in creating the network and who they reached out to, they did it when they said they wouldn't. So it's really the Big Ten's to blame. I'm sorry, guys, as a Buckeye, I apologize because they've caused a lot of this. They're really the ones that took the initiative. The SEC didn't make the network. They just had the games that everyone wanted to watch, and they didn't necessarily monetize that as fast as the Big Ten did. That kind of shifted and led this new era we're in.
But I don't blame them for being good at business, and I'll tell you why. When the Big Ten launched their network, they partnered with Fox. When SEC launched their network, they partnered with the worldwide leader, with ESPN. When the Pac-12 did it, they did the most amazing thing. They said, "We're going to do it ourselves." What the heck do you know about running a TV network? What the heck do you know about production? What the heck do you know about the distribution? They knew nothing, so they were never on DirecTV. They never got the distribution that they should have. They didn't launch with just one Pac-12 network, if you remember, and I don't blame you if you don't, because no one got these channels. They had the Pac-12 main channel, but then they had Pac-12 California, they had Pac-12 Southern California, Pac-12 Northern California, Pac-12 Arizona. They had all these Pac-12 networks that no one got, and they had no TV partner to be like, "Hey, bro, like this is how you do it. Like we're Fox, we know what we're doing." So listen, yes, the Big Ten is to blame, but I don't blame them. These schools wanted to go there, and they're
Yeah,
happy to be
you're
there
right.
now.
And like even when you look at the grand scope of all these sports networks, I believe the only ones, the NFL network and the MLB network, are the only ones that are doing it by themselves. The NBA does it with Turner. ESPN has helped a lot. Even the Texas, I think the Longhorn network is still.
Real quick, no, I mean, just I don't mean to correct you, but like they do have partners with
That's
the
what I just
NBA
said.
TV. It's
Yeah,
Turner with the. Oh, sorry. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah, because you have to partner with a network to have the distribution. Because you cannot go into a war with DirecTV and say, "Hey, we have the Pac-12." DirecTV is like, who the blank cares about the Pac-12? However, if you have Fox saying, "Hey, if you want Fox." Fox Sports, Fox Sports 1. You go down the list of the channels that they have, but you also have to take the Pac-12 network. They're going to take the Pac-12 network. But they had no idea what that they're doing. So the destruction of the conference is a shame, and it didn't need to happen. But it really happened because you had a bunch of people in the room who didn't know what they're doing. And even the group that they hired to do the most recent TV deal had never done a collegiate TV contract. I mean, imagine going into the most important negotiation of a conference's existence, 100 years, and you hire a group who's never done a
I'm
college
sorry,
a
guys.
sports TV deal. It's ridiculous. All right, let's leave it there for now. When we come back, we'll be joined by our old friend, good friend, G. Hay Wiley. When we come back right here on the Mightier 1090 in Southern California, the Bet in Las Vegas and the Hawaii Sports Radio Network.